Buongiorno e benvenuti al primo appuntamento con gli Studios Lounge e questo è uno spazio di talk show dove accoglieremo ogni giorno gli ospiti internazionali e più importanti del Ferrara Film Festival e siamo qui per inaugurare questa sessione di incontri appunto con il direttore artistico del Ferrara Film Festival, Maximilian Lowe, alla presenza anche del professor Gianluca Melillo Muto, professore di cinema e televisione all'Università Mercatorum, nonché partner degli studios cinematografici di Roma. Ma soprattutto oggi abbiamo il privilegio di inaugurare questa serie di incontri con un mito del cinema internazionale che è stato protagonista di capolavori come Il colore viola, So, Predator, solo per citarne alcuni, e ovviamente non posso non citare la fortunatissima saga Arma Letale, che tra l'altro, di cui tra l'altro è stato appena annunciato l'ultimo capitolo che verrà girato a novembre. E quindi sto parlando del premio Oscar alla carriera, Mr. Danny Glover. It's a pleasure to having you here as a first guest for the Studios Lounge. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And io parlerò in italiano per il nostro pubblico che ci segue sui social.
And
però
I'm gonna speak in English so we can Italian audience can understand and we can all understand.
Yes.
So it's gonna be very,
Okay.
very, very cool.
Okay.
All right. Welcome
Thank
to
you
the
so
show.
much.
That's great.
Welcome.
Great.
Quindi parlando dell'Oscar, che è proprio una novità di quest'anno, le è stato consegnato non soltanto per la sua carriera meravigliosa, ma anche e soprattutto per il suo impegno umanitario. Parlando di questo, che cosa crede che vada cambiato oggi nello scenario del cinema mondiale?
All right. So basically, your honorary award this year it was it's a great achievement about your humanitarian work. So what do you think? What's your opinion on the status of the movie industry today, and what do you think it could be changed, maybe for the better?
Oh, that's a range of several questions and certain response. When I think about movies, I'll talk about and think of it from the Spanish point of cultural production. What do we do with this incredible vehicle that can have enormous impact on people's lives? I remember when I first saw Sidney Poitier on television, at the movies. When I first saw him, just the image of this man who walks in with Rod Steiger in that great movie, you know, They Call Me Mr. Tibbs, you know, that one, Heat of the Night. The moment he said that, it's like something happened in the audience. And then what do they call you? Virgil, Baji, whatever they call me Mr. Tibbs. And at the moment in time that that movie was made, at that particular point in time, is a redefining of, at the same time, of American culture. They call me Mr. Tibbs, not boy, not by Amos or whatever, or Andy or whatever, they're Mr. Tibbs. And you can imagine for young kids what that meant, that they had value, another side of value. That's the power of movies. That's it. It's the power of it. And then to see a man, a black man, to be able to say that we all follow in the footsteps of Sidney in some way, whether it's Morgan, whether it's Denzel, whether it's Sam Jackson, all of us come in the footsteps of Sidney Poitier. And that's a great feeling, you know. I remember when I first met Mr. Poitier, I just was stunned. I didn't know what to say. I think it was like, but the only other moment that was similar in some ways when I first shook hands with Nelson Mandela, and my hand was shaking when I shook hands, and he took my hand briefly as I was shaking my hand and calmed my body down. But it was that's what it means. The images of what kids see are important. How they see the world and their relationship to the world is essential and important. And that to come up in that moment, to watch them flourish in different ways, you know, and it was amazing. because I mean, at 76 years old, that I was at the behest of the civil rights movement, where all these images were seen, you know, and the comedic, derogatory images were being shaped by new images, and certainly that affects us. So you affect not only affects me, it affects me as a human being, not as an artist. I had no idea of what it would be to be like an artist, but it affects me as a human being. You know, whether it's in that sense, and I think it's safe to say about images of women as well, the changing nature of that as well. And you find it in a different way, you know, just so many different ways that we begin to find identity and begin to shape the possibilities of who we can be, you know, not the limitations that are placed upon us by those past images or whatever.
Certo. Infatti il potere sicuramente del cinema è anche un po' questo, di aprire totalmente delle frontiere nuove,
The power of cinema is certainly this, to open new frontiers and
essere ispirazionale anche per i giovani e per le persone che devono ancora formare una mentalità, quindi è lì che possiamo magari fare qualcosa. Parlando proprio di questo, ci veniva voglia di chiederle se si ricorda la prima volta che è stato al cinema, magari qual era il primo film che ha visto e perché l'ha colpito in questo modo.
And speaking of this, an inspirational moment, so we would like to know, when was the first time that you walked into a movie theater, and what did you feel in that moment, if you remember?
We would go to the theater, my sister and my brother, the three of us. My mother, God bless her, had 3 children in 35 months. So I was the first one, months, 3 children, and I was the oldest, you know. So we would always visit to the movies, you know, and one of the things that I could not watch horror movies for a long time because they scared me to death, and I'd have nightmares at night with the horror movies. But we would always go to the movies. That would be, she would send the 3 of us on the bus, not far from my home, and go to a movie and see a movie. And it was, I can't remember one. I remember Carmen Jones. Carmen Jones is after the opera Carmen. As an African American version of Carmen Jones. It's musical with Pearl Bailey, Harry Belafonte, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, and Dorothy Dandridge, you know. That was the first images that I began to see in terms of that. Of course, we had other material on television because television, if you think like television now, you know, I almost invented television, you know. It's my generation. We're the first generation to look at television.
Yeah.
You know, I was born in 1946. So by the time television became popularized and everything else, so it's all those particular things and the images that you saw, and how you saw a relationship, yourself in relationship to that. Now, I'm going to tell you, I did not decide I wanted to be an actor or anything. I had nothing to do with that, about that. It's just the images. The idea of being an actor came because I was involved in movements, politically involved in movements. That was the basis of that. I mean, the idea when I was 30 years old, I didn't come because I worked in city government for 6.5 years, in the Office of Community Development. That's the idea of a way in which my generation saw themselves. What is that whole question of Kennedy, President Kennedy saying, think not what your country could do for you, think what you could do for your country. The whole idea embraced a whole moment, I think, for a lot of young people. The civil rights movement was happening, other movements were to come and everything else, and that you were saying, what can I do? So what I did was I majored in economics. I worked in city government for 6.5 years, doing work around community and community development. What are the ideas? And watching extraordinary people, extraordinary women in those communities that I worked in, whether it was in the Latinx community, the Mission, or whether it was in the southeast part of San Francisco, the Baby Hunters Point in time. Saw all these incredible women who had, you know, they were the ones who had the power. You know, they were the mothers, they were the grandmothers and everything else. They were the ones out there saying, what could we do at this particular moment? And they had taken center stage around the country, not just in San Francisco, but around the country, after the civil rights movement began to wane and everything else. They found another place and voice in that. And I mean, I think one of the things that has helped me as an actor and as just someone is that sense of myself, because my mother was there. My father, I watched him work in the post office and be amazingly engaged in what is happening, not only in the post office and the change and shift in power, but I watched him in terms of the relationship they took on as citizens, as young couple, you know, and I would be always privy from like 11, 12, 10. I was always trying to connect those dots between what they did and what I saw in the real world changing. When you see the heroic figure men and women like Fannie Lou Hamer, or when you look at people like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X and everything else, all those things fit into a kind of cultural underlaying for me as a child growing up into adulthood and everything else. And then when I went to college and everything, I became a student activist. On another level, challenging the power. We went on strike over 50 years ago in my campus, the longest student strike in the history of the country. And we got the first school of ethnic studies. First school of ethnic studies in which I'm still the only one left now. That's for Hispanic, First Nation, Native American people, African American, Asian American people. Boom. You know, and we went on strike and we won. You know what I'm saying? And it was a hallmark win. It was a hallmark in political organizing as a student. Well, we'd have been encouraged by what students did in the South, in Mississippi and Alabama. Those are young students who were down there, white and black students who were shot at. They were always in danger and everything else, trying to get people to organize the vote, trying to get them. That was my kind of, like, how you say, space that I grew up in, and to watch that and everything. Nothing to do with acting at all, you know. But then I became involved in the anti-apartheid movement, in apartheid, Portuguese colonialism, and everything else, Guinea-Bissau, Mozambique, Angola, all those, and Namibia, Southwest Africa. All those things with everything else attracted me to a writer who I thought, when I first read his work in 1976, he wrote for me. And that was a thoughtful God. The characters he wrote for me, whether it's Zachariah, whether it's Sizwe Banzi, or whether it's whatever the work that he did, Bozeman and Leanna, and everything else. And I ended up doing that work. And I knew once I found that work that I wanted to be an actor. And that was it, you know. So all those things come together in a way. You know, you never know, you know. If you'd have told me I was going to be an actor, a relatively quiet, you know, tall, awkward boy, come to be an actor one day. You know, but I took movement, I took dance, I took ballet, I did all that to kind of find a way. How do you free your body up? How do you relax your body? You know, all those kind of things are the preparations, or the pre things before Lethal Weapon and all the other stuff, or The Color Purple. You know.
Actually, I want to thank you for this message, because it's important for everybody to know that being an actor is a beautiful job, a wonderful career, but it's also difficult because you're doing this with your person. E adesso parlo un attimo in italiano per reintrodurre con il nostro
Yeah.
pubblico. E appunto il mestiere dell'attore è uno dei mestieri più belli del mondo, però quello che vediamo noi è soltanto la punta dell'iceberg, il successo, le carriere meravigliose. Dietro c'è molto lavoro ed è importante anche sottolineare che molto spesso questa scelta è una scelta che viene proprio per l'urgenza di portare un messaggio ed è proprio quello che ci ha appena raccontato Mr. Glover, quindi proprio legandoci al messaggio che è importante trasmettere tramite le scelte personali di chiunque voglia intraprendere questo mestiere. Vogliamo parlare anche un po' dei giovani che ci stanno ascoltando e magari chiedere un suggerimento a Mr. Glover su quello che può essere, quello che lui vuole, un messaggio che vuole lasciare a chi si affaccia per la prima volta a questa carriera.
So what would be your message for the young generations? They want to take the route of being an actor, which, like she was saying, is, you know, we only see the tip of the iceberg. You know, we see the success, but there's like a mountain of work. And what would be your suggestion if someone, some young folks wants to start this career?
Well, part of it is to find your story, and that's a broad kind of way of saying it. Find where that story is. The story is bound, whether I don't care if it's film or stage, whatever, it's bound by this amazing idea of trying to find the truth, defining the truth. You know what I'm saying? And just finding within that character and then within that story is inlaid in that story are different other kind of ways in which we can see ourselves and understand the value of the work that we do. And I just people see movies see us in movies and everything else, man. You know, when I first met Nelson Mandela, he was with Winnie Mandela, and as he approached me, he says with Winnie, he says, Winnie, hi, meet your other husband, because I played Nelson, and my hand is shaking like that when I'm going to shake it. That's real, you know. But I knew I was a part of something else that was much larger than you. That's the first thing. The first thing I think that what we do is much larger than us. It frames a way in which we want to see the world. We want to see the relationships. We want to see the stories that matter and that transform and build community. That's transformative, that. And I think that, you know, and there are ways to do that. I mean, I would go with my friend Zay Smokai, who was exiled from, he hadn't been home and everything, from South Africa, man. And you go to a party in 1980, you go to a party in 1979 of South Africans partying and everything else, and about midnight, after midnight, everybody's drunk, everybody's singing liberation songs, home songs, and crying. And that, you know, you want to say, in that sense, what enormous care, can't go home, don't know where. I'm on Broadway with Zay Smokai. I'm on Broadway in 1982 with Zay Smokai. It was wonderful. He won the Tony that year for his performance. A three-character play, Master Harold and the Boys by Athol Fugard. And his brother is executed in South Africa at the same time that we on Broadway. And he hadn't been home in nowhere. He'd been in exile. And he can't do anything. And he has to mourn his brother's death at the same time that he has to go on the stage and perform. How you do that? So I think in the sense that for all of us, and it's this thing about when we think of people, look at them in the communities they represent. When we think about them, we look at the communities they represent and how they hold the truth through their work as artists in the communities, everything. I mean, that may seem, how I would just say, that may seem, you know, how do we do that? But you find a way to do it. You find the work to do that engages you, that places you in a place of caring and love, and what I'm saying, that recreating humanity.
Wow, what a
I mean, that's what you go. I mean, you don't go in and say, I'm not going to write a textbook on that. I'm not saying all I'm going to do is that how can I find the center of that character in relationship to this? What is the story? You know, what is the story? Who do you? I used to when I was doing theater, every performance I did, I could do 300 performances. I dedicated to something. Maybe I dedicated to the homeless man that I saw sitting in the subway when I was coming up to perform when I was on Broadway. Maybe I found some kind of moment. I don't know how many times I dedicated, when he was in jail, dedicated performance to Nelson Mandela. All those are the kind of things bring you to life. It centers you in the story. So the play is not amorphous in any sense. It's specific in ways, and yet at the same time, it's specific to you, and it's become specific to you in your own reality. Then it becomes specific to the audience as well.
Yeah, very true.
Ho
Thank you
amato-
for sharing that.
Yeah, I really love the image of creating a new humanity. E parlando di creare nuova umanità e di creazione che fa parte di questo mestiere, possiamo chiederle a che cosa sta lavorando in questo momento, se ci sono dei progetti futuri di cui ci vuole parlare, qualche piccola anticipazione?
Speaking of creation, can you share something new that you're working right now, movie-wise, obviously?
Well, we're always working on something.
Of course, that's what I'm asking.
In some sense, I have a little niche company that does film. We did a film, a documentary called Bamako, Louverture film, the opening in French, after Toussaint Louverture. I've been trying to do a film on the Haitian Revolution. We talk about the three major revolutions: American Revolution, 1776, the French Revolution, 1789, the Haitian Revolution, 1791. No one talks about the Haitian Revolution because it's the first time in human history, not Spartacus with Kirk Douglas, not Spartacus, the first time in human history that a slave revolt resulted in the formation of a nation, and that's Haiti. And nobody knows that. Nobody ever thinks about that. It was those three revolutions that transformed the world into the new system of appropriation, the system we live in now. There's the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the one that was the first victory against the worldwide system of slavery. The first victory, the Haitian Revolution. And it defeated the most powerful army in the world. After Napoleon had come from Egypt, even though he did not conquer Egypt, he claimed that he conquered Egypt. He comes there and he gets his hand in Haiti with Leclerc, his brother-in-law. Boom, changes that. Nobody knows about that. Yeah, they say, why are these Haitians? They're the poorest country in the hemisphere, one of the poorest countries in the world. Yet it provided France in that period of point of time in the 18th century with 70% of its foreign revenue, the richest colony in the history of the world. Why is it there? Those are the questions. If we look at patterns of subjugation and exploitation, if we look at that from that vantage point, then you'd have to say, well, why is it? Why is it? Arguably, the greatest American intellectual of the last half of the 19th century into the 20th century was W.E.B. Du Bois. And the most incredible intellect. He was the first African American to graduate with a PhD from Harvard University before the end of the beginning of the 20th century. All these things about it, when I think about it, he was Haitian of Haitian descent, and proud of the fact he was of Haitian descent. All these kind of ways in which I don't think we understand fully from our own in ways we don't understand this whole evolution of struggle and exploitation. We know some broad things about it, but we don't know that, you know. Well, Europe is a different place, of course. These are not settler states. Everything outside of Europe is a settler state. I don't care if you call Latin America, I don't care if you call Canada, I don't care if you call, they're all settler states. If we look at it, just the Europeans are indigenous, French are indigenous to France, Italians are indigenous to Italy. They have a whole history that goes back, hundreds of years. They go with this whole history that goes back before Christ, you know, and they're all that. But you don't find the rest of the world and understand the rest of the world from that vantage point, because the resources, they had their wars, the 1588. The defeat of the Spanish Armada, which made England the most powerful country in the world. What the British saying was, the sun never sets on the British Empire. So all those kind of things, you take that, but you don't know what that means in the terms of people's lives, and trying to understand that and understand the kind of pattern. So when people were fighting for something, and when Leclerc's forces came there to re-enslave the Haitians, they defeated them and made it Napoleon so desperate for money that he sold a Louisiana Purchase for a matter of nothing to this new country. And you know where they got the money from? They got the money from British banks. And so when they went to the War of 1812, which is the war against England again, the war against this country was at war with the connection between all these things, they were at war. But what was establishing is a new a new arrangement of procurements, of profits, and exactly the new system that certainly we enact today. I didn't mean to get that way, but it's
very interesting.
But you try to kind of understand, not the mirror that we see, that's often put up with us to see ourselves and our relationship to struggle for poor people, labor, workers, their relationship to that, with the new struggle and relationship that we have with the systems of, the systems of exploitation.
Nella mia esperienza, Studios è uno degli stabilimenti cinematografici più importanti d'Europa, e abbiamo visto e vediamo continuamente grandi artisti creare, costruire, realizzare, concretizzare idee e sogni in set, in film e quant'altro. Se c'è una cosa che mi ha sempre colpito, è una mia personale opinione di ciò che differenzia un attore da un grande attore, che è la passione. Io oggi sono stato in silenzio, cosa che mi capita raramente, mi capita molto raramente, perché la passione i contenuti e la passione che traspare da Mr. Danny Glover è incredibile, e io davvero vorrei sapere quanto questa passione in tutto che si avverte, l'empatia e la passione, siano stati un elemento caratterizzante della sua attività.
So he's saying, Gianluca is saying that studios, in Rome, which is among the biggest movie studios in Europe, he saw many productions, and he saw many actors working and filming in their studio. But what really he was mesmerized, and he was silent, and usually he's never silent. It was mesmerized by your passion, and that what makes a huge difference, for him, but I guess also for me, for everybody, between a good actor and a great actor, is the passion behind it, and he was very mesmerized by your passion, and were you always like this, and was this your your drive since the very beginning, or that was this change? Is there something that changed along the way about your passion?
Well, I think there are kind of ways. I mean, I'm just. I always think of myself ultimately as a child growing up. As a child, very quiet, very awkward in a lot of ways. As a child, awkward in my body because I was tall, awkward in that, and probably awkward. Also, maybe I was good in math, but I was not great at reading. Little things that you pick up and understand. It just so happens that sometimes you invest those parts of yourself in the characters. Really, you know, I'm not just saying inadvertently. And sometimes understanding of having an emotion that certainly drives the character that you find in says, Ma, how are you, older woman? What's that? You don't recognize me. Oh, to tell the truth, the whole troops that helped me I got sick of myself and made a change. That's beautiful language. This is like Fugard. Zachariah is talking about talking to his mother. Now, why am I the other son? You know, it's a kind of beautiful metaphor about that. You know, I just think in that sense, those are the kind of ways that allowed me to grow in San Francisco. So there's all the things. And then when I was 30 and decided I was going to take my life to be as an actor, I found my writer. I found my writer. In the middle of something, I found my writer, and that was Fugard. You know, I don't find the movements that I was involved in, which exemplified the work of Fugard in his passion for what his own passion. If I don't find that, I don't become an actor. No. And then you find, you learn, oh, I find the same thing in doing Macbeth. You find a pathway to doing Macbeth, you know. And I did the same year that James Earl Jones did, and I can't remember when, but at the same time I do Macbeth. And then I have this kind of, we have this performance. Everything that I do, I think it has always provided a platform for me to grow and to find somewhere inside of it that's much deeper, you know, for me. I mean, I'd never done Shakespeare before I did Macbeth, you know, and I did Macbeth, and I got the iambic pentameter. I put a cork in my mouth, between my teeth, and would run every day 4 miles on the beach. 2 miles one way, 2 miles in LA, and then with a cork in there and saying each line. So I felt comfortable with the language. If it were done when 'tis done, then 'twere done quickly. If the assassination could tremble of the consequence, catch with his success that this blow might be the be all and end all here, but here upon this bank and shoal of time, we jump the life to come. Pronouncing that, saying, getting the words out. Putting the breath under the word. Because once you put the breath under the word, you're able now, comfortable enough to find the how you say, the confidence that you can do it. It's so funny. It's really
Amazing.
It's amazing, and I think in honoring in that way, I think we honor so many other different things when we honor those people who come before us, you know, and you find, yeah. Yeah, so I maybe the first rehearsal, you got the first rehearsal, and said, where did they get this bumbling idiot from? to play Macbeth.
Thank you for sharing that.
It's all those things, and you find that you find that places in the heart, which was my which is really the first film, and I tell you, my mother said that I was going to do in 1983, around April. I was living in New York. I had finished a show on Broadway, and I had done a film, Iceman, with Timothy Hutton and John Lone. And I came back home, and I was with my mother and dad, and my mother said, "You're going to do a movie in September that's going to change your life. It's going to be about you." I called my mother after I read Places in the Heart. Before, they didn't email the stuff to you. You had to go to the agent's office, read it and everything else, and then leave the script there. And I started crying at the end. And I remember that, and I called my mom, and I said, "Mom, I found this script, and she had told me you're going to do something in September that was going to change your life, and it's going to be about you." And it was my relationship that I had with my grandparents, being on a farm, and from my mother left me with her mother when I was 6 months old. And who else would she want it? Because she was getting ready to have her third child. But no, first time she and my father got in an argument, and so she went home. Of course, she went home, and I know her mother, my grandmother said, "Carrie," my mother's name, "I know who you are. That's a good man. You go back here. I take the baby. You leave the baby here, me. Leave that." And who else could you trust to leave your child with except your mother, who is not only your mother, she is a great, legendary midwife. So all she's used to her life is being around babies. That's what she loves. When she was 95 years old, she was walking around. I was with her, and she was saying, I said, "What's wrong?" She said, she said, "I miss having babies around," because she'd been around babies since she was midwifing when she was 20 years old, 20-something years old. So she'd been midwifing, and and so in that community, and she's the most valuable person in that community, and not only in terms of delivering children, but in terms of people talking about things. My grandmother, and she said she missed that, but my mom left me with her. So I had all these ideas of feelings, smell of heat, the weight of heat, the smell, the noises you sound in the country, the different noises you sound in San Francisco. Just like here, you can tell that different rooms. You go to the country here, and then they're way different sounds and smells that you have in the country that you don't have in Rome. And all those kind of things, I think that I was able to try to capture in that particular moment. And because my mom said, "It's going to be about you." And it's just kind of fascinating. These people were fascinating to me, my grandmother and grandparents, my grandmother and grandfather. They made a decision that their kids were going to school. Were going to pick cotton in September. They were going, even though it made hardship and they were poor. So my mother, all my mother's, herself and her siblings went to college. Whole change. They're not sharecroppers. They're not tenant farmers. They can go on in the world. And so when my mother walked through and stood up and the regional president and become the regional president of the most advanced organization in the fight for rights for black women, women of color. She becomes that. And it's because somebody said, "You're not going to pick cotton in September. You're going to go to school in September. And then you're going to go to college, and you're going to graduate, and you're going to teach at your high school." that you were in high school with. All those kind of things. I'm a part of that. And I think for the most part, I'm sorry I'm long-winded and everything, but there's the most part of that. When I sit here, I knew that my mother loved her mother and father more than anything you can imagine. I know that she saw herself as an extension of them and saw themselves, if they had not made the choices they made, she would not be who she was.
Thank you so much for sharing such personal stories with us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Ci ha dato l'opportunità di parlare di storie che hanno bisogno di essere raccontate. Grazie per andare a cercare le storie che hanno bisogno di essere raccontate. Ti prego di tradurre.
You gave us the opportunity to go to very, deep conversations thanks to stories, because it's all about stories that are inspirational for sure. And we could listen to you for hours.
Yeah, actually.
And really. So, and thank you. I mean, I really appreciate you, the way you are.
Well, I really, a friend of mine, actually my daughter's godmother said, "You and your mother argue like girlfriend and boyfriend." I said, "We are." Maybe my dad, man, he would see the two of us arguing and everything when I was about 17 years old. He'd turn around and look, he'd go back the other way. he said, but it's because she is an amazing woman. It's crazy when I think about it. I always used to tell her, I said, you're my Georgia. Come here, we'd argue. You're my Georgia peach. Oh, no, boy, leave me alone. Then we argue again. But it was beautiful. We're in love with each other. We really had that, And I was the firstborn, so there's a lot of that. I try to be like the man I think is the most beautiful man I ever met in my life, most wonderful man. That's my dad. He was only about 5'5", man, but he was so devoted to this amazing woman, and he loved being a father. He didn't have to say "I love you" one time, but you could see in his eyes he loved being a father. Man, he's a beautiful man, and he was cool too, man. He had the temperament of a jazz musician. You know what I'm saying? And he was cool too, We talking about he's the shortest one in the family, and because I'm the second tallest,
How come you're so tall then?
Well, my mother's side was my dad had born in 1919, so he had rickets as a child, which stunted his growth, and but that didn't take away from just how amazing he was, and he was devoted to this. I was just saying, Mama, we can't talk about this. Because you know what, we're going to get in an argument. Mom, you can't tell me what I can talk about. I said, Mom, so we start talking about it, we get in an argument. It was beautiful, you know what I'm saying? It was kind of like...
One last question, yes?
Sì, no, volevo arrivare verso, una conclusione di questo incontro per liberarle, e grazie anche per la generosità che ci sta dando per tutto questo tempo. Abbiamo parlato oggi moltissimo del mestiere dell'attore, e recitare non è, come spesso si crede, fingere, ma è tutto il contrario, portare alla luce la verità. E oggi abbiamo avuto un grandissimo esempio di una splendida verità, quindi grazie tantissimo per la generosità con cui racconta le storie degli altri e la sua.
So we thank you very much, because acting is not like pretending to be. It's to bring realities, to bring something real.
Yes.
And thanks to you, listening to you, it really came across so alive, and it was amazing. So thank you for your time and for this amazing opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Stasera grande opening con Danny Glover alle 20 al Cinema Apollo, e poi noi ci vediamo domani. Grazie Camilla, grazie Gianluca. Thank you, Danny.
All right.
Allora vi diamo appuntamento a questa sera per il grande opening del Ferrara Film Festival, e vi aspettiamo domani per il prossimo appuntamento dello Studio Lounge. Grazie mille.
Domani.
Grazie.
Yeah. Thank you.